Today we are completely dismantling a 2,000-year-old Roman smear campaign against one of history's absolute most brilliant monarchs, Cleopatra. We all have that classic Hollywood image of her in our heads, right? Well, forget it. Today we're diving into the actual facts.
Seriously, ask yourself, what if that seductive Egyptian queen from pop culture never actually existed at all? What if the historical reality is, infinitely more fascinating? We're going to let the historical records and the hard archaeological evidence be our guide today to uncover who she truly was.
Section 1. Not actually Egyptian.
Okay, let's shatter the biggest misconception right out of the gate. Despite being universally recognized as the most famous ruler of ancient Egypt, Cleopatra wasn't actually Egyptian. Ethnically, she was entirely Macedonian Greek.
So how does that work? Let's trace it back. She was a direct descendant of Ptolemy I Soter. He was actually one of Alexander the Great's top generals, who established the Ptolemaic dynasty way back in 323 BCE. And get this, for nearly 300 years, her family ruled Egypt strictly as outsiders. They were so disconnected from their subjects that they flat out refused to speak Egyptian. They conducted all state business entirely in Greek. Now, this brings us to the number 9. That is the number of languages Cleopatra mastered. She utterly broke that 300-year family tradition of isolation. Her impressive roster included Egyptian, Hebrew, and Arabic. And by doing this, she ensured that for the first time in literal centuries, the ruler of Egypt could actually speak directly to her subjects in their own native tongues. It was a real game changer.
Section 2. Caesar and the carpet.
All right, let's fast forward to 51 BCE. An 18-year-old Cleopatra takes power. But, according to the strict and honestly kind of wild family customs of the time, she was forced to co-rule with and marry her 10-year-old brother, Ptolemy XIII. Unsurprisingly, her brother's ambitious advisors were not about to share power with a highly intelligent 18-year-old. So they launched a coup, driving Cleopatra into exile in Syria. But she wasn't about to give up. She realized she needed a remarkably powerful ally to reclaim her kingdom, so she strategically set her sights on the Roman general Julius Caesar, who happened to just arrive in Alexandria.
But to actually reach him, she had to get incredibly creative. She audaciously smuggled herself right past enemy lines, wrapped securely inside a carpet, or maybe a hemp sack, depending on the source. It was a massive life-or-death risk. But when she was finally revealed, she instantly captivated Caesar. And it wasn't just the theatrical entrance. It was her incredible wit and strategic mind that really won him over.
And this whole event just brilliantly illustrates her political genius. The outcome of this newly formed alliance was a civil war that fundamentally reshaped Egypt. Her brother, Ptolemy XIII, ended up drowning in the Nile while trying to flee. Meanwhile, Cleopatra emerged as the ultimate victor. She was securely back on the throne with Caesar's military backing and, to top it all off, a newborn son named Caesarion.
Moving on to Section 3. The power couple era.
So everything is going great until the geopolitical chessboard changes entirely. Julius Caesar is brutally assassinated in Rome in 44 BCE, leaving Egypt incredibly vulnerable basically overnight. Cleopatra knew she urgently needed a new Roman protector to maintain her kingdom's independence. So she orchestrated pure political theater in 41 BCE. She actually sailed down the Cydnus River to meet Mark Antony, one of Rome's top military leaders. And she dressed as the goddess Aphrodite, arriving on a massive golden barge equipped with brilliant purple sails. It was a calculated, jaw-dropping display of unimaginable wealth and divine power.
And guess what? The strategy worked flawlessly. Antony was completely captivated. But this wasn't just a romance. They formed a massive political and strategic alliance. Together, they had 3 children, and their joint influence triggered a massive economic boom in Egypt. They were literally building an undeniable superpower.
Which brings us to Section 4, Propaganda and the Fall. Here is the absolutely crucial point. Rome watched this growing wealth and power with absolute panic. Mark Antony had actively begun handing actual Roman territories over to Cleopatra and her children. His political rival back in Rome, a guy named Octavian, seized on this. He launched a massive, relentless propaganda war. Octavian explicitly framed Cleopatra not as a fellow, capable ruler, but as a dangerous foreign witch who was actively brainwashing a noble Roman general. It was the perfect excuse to justify attacking them.
This simmering tension inevitably erupted into all-out war at the Battle of Actium in 31 BCE.
This was a massive, historic naval showdown, and unfortunately for our power couple, Octavian's forces utterly and decisively crushed Antony and Cleopatra's combined fleet.
They both knew exactly what this defeat meant. In the Roman world, losing a war of this scale meant being captured, dragged back as prisoners, and paraded through the streets of Rome in chains for the public's entertainment. Facing this grim reality of absolute defeat and humiliation, the couple chose a devastating way out.
The sequence of events here is deeply tragic. Antony actually stabbed himself with his own sword upon hearing a completely false rumor that Cleopatra had already died. Shortly after, in August of 30 BCE, a 39-year-old Cleopatra ended her own life.
Now here's where history likely got her death completely wrong too. The popular legend, the one you always see in classical paintings, claims she tempted a venomous Egyptian asp to bite her. But modern historians point to a much different reality. They highly suspect she completely bypassed the snake in favor of a lethal, carefully hidden cocktail of poison. It was likely a mix of hemlock and opium to ensure a swift, painless end.
Section 5. The real Cleopatra's legacy.
The consequences of her death were absolutely monumental. It didn't just end a remarkable individual's life, it officially brought the entire 3,000-year-old Egyptian empire to a permanent close. Egypt was swiftly annexed by Rome, transforming it into a Roman territory and quite literally changing the map of the world forever.
Because the victors are always the ones who get to write the history books, the Roman historians deliberately smeared her as a dangerous seductress. Why? To justify their unprovoked invasion of her country. But archaeological evidence and actual contemporary accounts completely debunked this. The Roman myth was, from start to finish, a calculated fiction. In reality, she was an exceptionally capable monarch. She used every single diplomatic, linguistic, and political tool at her disposal to hold off the world's greatest superpower for over 2 decades. She wasn't just surviving. She was actively defending and enriching her kingdom through sheer intellect.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, it leaves us with a really powerful final thought. If an empire's propaganda machine could successfully erase the brilliance of history's last pharaoh for over 2 millennia, substituting a brilliant leader for a cheap pop culture caricature, whose untold stories are we missing today? Keep that in mind the next time you dive into history. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the real Cleopatra.